Patch 7.04 completely destroyed many of the top characters in the meta, with huge nerfs to characters like Jett and Skye, where the majority of compositions were being based off of them. Everything is going to change. So in this video, we're going to talk about the big winners and losers in the meta and how the meta is going to shift post 7.04. So if you want to know what characters to start grinding right now, this is the perfect video for you. Now, there's a lot of characters that got subtle changes, and if you want to look at the full patch notes, you can check it out after the video in the links down below. But the two characters in question the most is both Jett and Skye. Jett receiving nerfs to her Tailwind, Cloudburst, Updraft, and Ultimate make her just a lot harder to use than before. Now, does this make her unplayable? Well, not likely, but she's a lot weaker than she was before and less consistent, and her pick rate is most likely going to be cut in half. Now, the other big loser is Skye, and Skye is getting nerfed to her Flash, her Trailblazer, her Seekers, and really, a lot of these abilities are very important for the character, and having a Flash that doesn't blind as long, a Trailblazer that's easy to deal with, and Seekers that are harder to get and also easier to deal with, these are all just going to be a net negative for the character. Similar to Jett, though, I do think that Skye is still going to be a rather good pick. Not nearly hurt as bad as Jett was, but still overall going to be a really painful nerf to the character that is going to make other initiators more appealing when compared directly to Skye. Now, before we talk about our winners, let's talk about SkillCapped.com, the only place that you're going to quickly climb to Immortal and beyond with the press of a button. From tips and tricks on how to get better aim to better positioning and decision making, we got everything you could possibly need, so check it out right now in the links down below. Now, those weren't the only nerfs, but there were a lot of rather small nerfs that aren't nearly going to have as much impact as those two. Those two nerfs are what's going to change the meta the most. Now, talking about the winners, there are mainly three categories for them. Number one are things that were already at the top of the meta and didn't get nerfed enough to push them out of the top of the meta. Number two, things slightly under the surface of that A or S tier that are all of a sudden going to see more play now that the top of the meta characters are nerfed really hard. And then number three, characters that are going to see more play due to the map rotation and some of the other changes that are being implemented in the game. Now, first off, let's talk about Jett's nerf. Who fills the gap left behind by Jett? Assuming that Jett sees a dramatic drop in pick rate, but not a complete removal, mainly due to the fact that she's really hard to replicate. What she does is rather unique. She still will leave a void when she decreases in pick rate by quite a bit. And the biggest winner is undoubtedly Raze, who is just not seeing any changes. Raze is already one of the most picked characters in the game, and the only other duelist that sees play relative to Jett, and Jett got super nerfed and Raze did not. Now, Raze isn't going to be good on every single map, and for those maps, I do imagine some other picks, which we'll talk about in a bit, but overall, Raze is a character that is just super strong, and when everything gets weaker relative to something that's very strong, they get actually stronger. So overall, I do think that Raze is going to be the overall best duelist winner, and it's not going to be particularly close. Now, I also imagine that with Jett's departure, there's going to be small upticks in double controller and double initiator. We're already seeing quite a bit of double controller on the maps where it's good, but I do imagine we'll see slightly more of that because there'll be less people playing Jett. And in addition to that, the double initiator is going to be more appealing. While Skye definitely did get nerfed, other initiator pairs might be good, or pairing a Skye with another initiator is more viable now that you have less of a duelist that you want to play, and there's going to be less double duelist comps. In addition to that, there's going to be a slight increase in certain duelist play like Neon and other duelists, but this is going to be kind of map dependent, and it's not going to be that much relative to how much Jett is leaving, mainly because these characters didn't get substantial buffs, which is really what is needed for these characters to be more appealing than playing something like a double initiator, because why would you force a duelist to be played when it's been shown in the past that you don't even need a duelist in a lot of these compositions? So yeah, they're not going to just suddenly fill the duelist gap. There's going to be other more powerful options that are already proven to be powerful seeing play, because Jett isn't the damn holding back duelist from seeing play. She's just powerful enough to see play in spite of all the other powerful characters in the game. Well, at least she was before her huge nerfs. Now, next up is Skye. Skye getting mega nerfed. Who fills the gap of this character that is going to be a lot weaker than she was before? Well, I don't think that she's by any means deleted. She's still going to see a lot of play, but characters that already saw substantial pick rate on the maps they're good in, like Kayo on Ascent, are going to see even more play now, and I think especially with some maps getting rotated back in like Breeze, we'll probably see even more pick rate. And I do imagine that Skye will still see play on a lot of these maps, but it's going to be split with another initiator, or it's going to be a lot more competitive to decide versus now when it's obvious like, hey, let's just get a Skye. It's obvious that she's better. Now it's going to be like, oh, should I pick a Skye or should I pick this other initiator? It's going to be a much harder decision to make. Now, other characters in the initiator role did get nerfed. Characters like Fade got slightly slight nerf Sova. Now the recon only actually pulses twice instead of 3 times, and even characters like Breach got slight changes, slight buffs, slight nerfs. But overall, these characters didn't get changed enough to fundamentally shift their spot, and they all technically get buffed because Skye got nerfed, and these characters are more appealing as initiator choices. Especially characters like Fade and Sova that work better on some of the new maps rotating in, like Breeze, will get buffs relative to their current pick rate, and they're going to get an extra buff because they're going to eat up some of Skye's pick rate. Now, if I were to give my theory about what's going to happen, though, is we're going to see a lot more map-specific initiators. There's already a lot of that right now. Kayo on Ascent, characters like Breach on specific maps like Haven and Fracture, and I do imagine a lot of these map-specific picks are going to get more cemented because now that Skye is reeled back into a reasonable rate, all of a sudden certain initiators play better on certain maps, and I do imagine that Skye will still have maps that she's most optimal in, but it's not going to be every single map. It's going to go back in the past where Skye was decent on some maps, but not just like a slam dunk on the majority of maps. And it looks like Riot is really trying to go for a more balanced meta where things are more map centric, and it actually is going to encourage people to be more flexible as opposed to more one tricks going around. Now, last up, who stands to benefit the most from these agents falling in pick rate? Who are the true winners of this patch? And we already talked about Raze. I do think that Raze is the biggest winner going into this next patch. She seems like she is just in a really great spot to both be dominant in ranked and coordinated play. Super strong when she dodged nerfs when one of her strongest competitors is being nerfed very hard. And yeah, Raze is just a super big winner. In addition to that, Killjoy is still gonna be extra dominant. In fact, more so, I think one of the best ways to break through a Killjoy's defense is with a really aggressive Jett, which means that now that Jett is weaker, even if Jett still sees play, it's gonna be harder to execute, especially with that smoke getting a decrease in time. That's a really big deal where the smoke is gonna fade in half the rate. It makes it a lot harder to break onto a site, or while you're waiting in smoke, waiting for your team to catch up and break through the Killjoy utility. That's gonna be a lot harder to do, and I do think that overall, because Killjoy only got the nerf to her ultimate, getting one more ult point, Killjoy is still gonna be really dominant, and it's gonna be probably even harder to break through than it was before. And I do imagine that the only other character that can really aggressively take space on site in that aggressive of a way while still having a really balanced kit, Raze, is gonna see more pick rate to challenge that. So these characters are gonna get rose even higher, which is a little unfortunate that these characters kind of escaped any sort of nerfs. If you're trying to reduce the power level of everything across the board, then it doesn't really make sense to keep these characters so strong. But that's just my opinion. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. Next up, we're gonna see a lot more non-Skye initiators. Even though many of them did get slight nerfs, it's not nearly as much as Skye, and there's gonna be a lot more optimization with what initiator on what map. And I do want to make this clear, and this is the most important point. Oftentimes when you remove things that are super dominant and make up the core strategies in a meta, there's a domino effect, and it's really hard to know exactly what that domino effect will do. So even though right now it seems that these changes will make a direct thing happen, like one character get nerfed means that other characters will replace it, who knows if there's another strong strategy. Maybe it's going to be double controller, double initiator. Maybe it's going to be a triple duelist composition. We never fully know exactly what's going to happen when there's a domino effect that really happens when you nerf super strong characters that have such high win rates and high pick rates, and all of a sudden these characters are super weak. So even though this is a preemptive snapshot into what probably will happen and what could happen, doesn't mean it will 100% happen, and the meta will constantly be changing week by week after the patch releases. So definitely keep that in mind. But these are the best characters that I would suggest for you, and some of the big losers that you need to know about the new patch. But if you want to prepare yourself for the new act, then check out SkillCapped.com, where we have agent guides over every single agent listed. So if you really want to get better at the positioning or decision making from game to game with your agents of choice, you got to go check it out right now. One click away in the links down below.